His first message: "You people led the country. The insight and wisdom of the great nation of Iran in the recent events, along with the steadfastness, courage, and presence, made friends admire and enemies astonished. It was you, the people, who led the country and guaranteed its power." So that was, that was the short and sweet of it. A summarization of like the demands being made. It's still a regional war, though. Also, do you think Iran will be forced to test a nuke to stop America and Israel escalating the war more? I don't think they would do it now. I think it's an inevitability that Iran will get a nuke. I think the calculation right now in the short term is to damage the global economy hard enough, damage American assets hard enough to cause them to retreat, to cause them to not go up the escalation ladder or force them into a de-escalation, or invite them into boots on the ground military warfare, which will absolutely be destructive both for Iran, but certainly for the American troops, right? That's also part of the reason why they keep saying, come on, bring a naval asset into the Strait of Hormuz to try to fucking move a tanker through. Like, they keep inviting that over and over again. In some ways, Iran is best positioned for direct invasion. They're best positioned for direct invasion by American forces because America has no logistical supply chain that they can create to consistently feed munitions and food and medical supplies for their soldiers if they were to make this mistake of invading Iran, a country that is basically a fucking fortress that has natural choke points that I suspect the Iranian weapons have been trained on for decades at this point, right? Because like this mountainous region in Iran, the topography of Iran makes it so that there are natural choke points that you have to go through, right? You have to bring your heavy weapons through, and that will cause the American military, that if they do invade, if they make this fucking gigantic mistake of invading Iran militarily, that will create an environment that's just like, it's a turkey shoot, right? Like the Iranian forces will fucking eviscerate so much of the American equipment. There's very little chance of an American success in that situation. Iran is not like Iraq. They have a competent military that has been training for this. They have a competent military that's actually been working on counterinsurgency initiatives in the region as well. Like, there is a reason why America thinks that they can invoke some kind of regime change from an aerial bombing campaign. But in the absence of any sort of popular mobilization on the ground, they will never be able to achieve that. Even in Libya, where this was primarily an air campaign with like bombing missions, they still had plenty of popular mobilization and forces that they could tap into on the ground, and a lot of anger and resentment from certain sectarian groups inside of Libya. In the absence of that, in the absence of like Kurds and the Balochis and the Sunnis living in Iran and some of the Persians or whatever, if they cannot activate these people, there is no way that they can achieve regime change. Which, by the way, won't even be fucking regime change. Let's be real. There is very little likelihood that a country with a 30% popular, social base is going to turn around and allow all these other ethnic groups to overtake the country and like piece it aside and balkanize it.
The rhetoric that we are hearing from Iran's new supreme leader is quite similar to his father's rhetoric. Remember, Iran's former supreme leader was taken out in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury when this war began. And in those opening strikes, Mujtaba Khamenei's wife, mother, and one son were also killed. Again, the latest remarks, though, that we are getting from the supreme leader via state media, and we are quoting Reuters here, indicate that he will continue ordering the attacks on U.S. bases in the region and continue efforts to close the Strait of Hormuz. Bill, Dana?
And Trey, as you pointed out, Iran's new supreme leader said that Iran has, quote, warm relations with Gulf countries. I'm curious, how do you think those Gulf countries are going to react to hearing that, considering Iran is droning and missiling them every day?
Yeah, I've been speaking with Gulf leadership and sources over the past 2 weeks, and I would not describe the current relations as warm between these two countries. Not only Qatar, but the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain have all come under Iranian ballistic missile and drone fire in recent days. And while the Iranians have attacked U.S. bases in the region, they have also attacked civilian infrastructure and energy infrastructure, including Omani energy infrastructure. We showed you those images earlier this hour of an oil storage facility in Oman burning as a result of an Iranian.
I don't know how we can say that all of Iran's attacks have been meticulously planned due to the scarcity when they've shot 2 rockets into Turkey, drones into Azerbaijan, and hit things like the Kuwaiti Ministry of Social Services. It's just more messy than Khamenei or we are suggesting. No, of course. That's what... I'm not saying it's fucking 100% precise. I'm simply saying that if you look at 2 countries that actually have precise targeting capabilities that have still double tapped a fucking school in comparison to the death toll, the civilian casualty from the IDF side and the American side, Iran is 100% abiding by a code of conduct that is infinitely closer to the international rules of war, okay? That's all I'm saying. Of course they're not fucking fully following it. It's virtually impossible. This is not a defense of what they're doing anyway. There is a reason why in the first couple of days, everyone was like, why are they hitting these hotels? What the fuck's going on? They stopped asking those questions, if you recall. If you noticed, they stopped asking those questions. The Kuwait, the 7 soldiers that were killed in Kuwait were killed in a targeting operation that actually slammed a civilian port. They blew up a civilian port in Kuwait. Why did they blow up a civilian port in Kuwait? That's civilian infrastructure. Well, it turns out there was a command center in the fucking middle of the goddamn civilian port. Like, this is literally what Israel projects all the time. Whenever they say, oh, Hamas is hiding under hospitals. Hamas is hiding under civilian infrastructure. We have to blow up the civilian infrastructure. Well, in this case, like, they literally were there. They died in a container that was in the middle of a fucking civilian port. Yeah, probably my initial statement was just saying Khamenei wasn't totally accurate when he said they were only hitting bases. That's not accurate. Nobody compared actions of Iran or Israel. Iran was violating. Yeah, of course. Of course, they're not 100% accurate, and they're not just hitting the bases. They also suggested that they might hit the banks, right? Because when the enemy is going up the escalation ladder and hitting oil refineries like Israel did, then Iran retaliates by striking oil refineries, right? If Israel and America starts hitting banks like they did, then Iran says we might actually hit banks. We might hit banks in the GCC. Okay? Americans are bazookaing apartments near my parents, bro. Yeah. So hitting banks in the GCC, they have not done so, if I'm not mistaken, so far. Like, the reality is if America was a regional actor, if the United States of America was where Turkey is, for example, I'm sure that they would be targeting American installations in wherever Turkey is. If America was where Turkey is right now, they'd be hitting fucking banks in America. But the reason why they can't do that and they're hitting the GCC is because that's within reach. That's it.
Drone attack. And remember, Oman was the mediator in the negotiations that were taking place earlier this year indirectly between the Americans and the Iranians. And so the current relationships are not good between Gulf countries and the Iranian regime. And despite the fact that some communication has taken place with Iran's foreign minister reaching out to his Gulf counterparts, these attacks against Gulf countries do continue.
Trey, yesterday, even on the 5, we were saying, is there proof of life that we could get that this guy is still alive? There are reports also that he was injured. Do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, I spoke with an Israeli intelligence official in recent days who indicated Mojtaba Khamenei is injured. They downplayed the reports, though, that he was critically injured, saying that he was injured in one of the strikes the opening.
No evidence that Iran attacked Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Oman oil yet. Okay, the other side of the story is that you cannot take everything that the Iranian government is saying at face value either. Iran and Russia has done this at times too. They have accidentally blown up shit that they didn't intend to blow up. Okay? This is not like just because they're saying that they didn't do this and just because they're denying it doesn't mean that that's actually accurate. Okay? There could have been a rogue element within the IRGC. This is a likelihood, especially with the current limitations that they have in terms of centralized command in the Mosaic defense structure. You can have a rogue IRGC striker decide to fucking blow up the Omani refineries. Okay, that can happen. A misinput. Okay, a misclick. You know, so we don't know. We don't know yet. There will be more investigations that will be conducted in the upcoming days, and we'll have more information. Having said that, as far as like the weight of those statements from the Iranian side, the only one that I definitely don't think was like a misinput and actually was most likely a psyop would be the Omani one, because as far as all of the regional actors goes, like Azerbaijan, there's some evidence that the Azeri airspace is being utilized by Israeli fighter jets, right? And they're entering the Iranian airfields by way of Azerbaijan. There's also American bases in Turkey. So like that one does make sense as far as like whether it's a rogue actor or whether it's like Iran deliberately doing it just to like create chaos or whatever. But the Omani one is the one that makes the least sense. That's why when as far as the strikes that have taken place that like don't make a lot of sense, or expanding the theater of war for Iran, the Oman one is the one that I consider to be the strangest one, especially because out of all the GCC states, like Oman is the one that is the closest to Iran, even closer than Qatar is, and Qatar has a fucking gas field that they share with Iran. Okay, that's the reason why people say like Qatar is the number one op of Israel in the region, that kind of thing, right?
Strikes of Operation Epic Fury, again, that killed his wife, his father, of course, and one son. As we look forward,
also the Omani people are the chillest.
And to that, Jane, I will say he mentioned
it would not be very chill. It would not be very cash money of Iran to strike Oman like that, especially considering how fucking chill they are, like how unimaginably chill they. I mean, dude.